When people say Filipino food is bad, what they usually refer to is lechon, spaghetti, halo-halo. We have a certain picture of what health looks like. We think it's the kale, it's the quinoa, all of these Western food items. What we see on social media or what foreigners see about Filipino food. I think that's the biggest perpetuator of this.
Welcome to the Soul Podcast, where we dive into stories that shape our souls.
Again, we have Jo Sebastian. In our previous episode, she opened up about where it all began, from her struggles with body image to finding her voice as a nutritionist who advocates for food freedom. And today, we'll talk about guilt around food, the unspoken rules we've grown up with, and practical ways that we can all start creating a healthier, kinder relationship with food and with ourselves. So, hi, Jo. Hi again.
Hello, welcome back.
Okay, so one of the most interesting videos that you make, I think, are the ones where you order from fast food and make it healthier. Can you tell us a bit more about those videos and why you can eat fast food even if you're trying to be healthy?
The first video was a Mang Inasal one, where it was something that my sister often orders for us. And she ordered some, and then we boiled up some broccoli because I really try my best when it comes to nutrition, focusing on something called making additions rather than restrictions, which is adding nutrients instead of restricting yourself. So if you listen to the previous episode, we talked about how I really went through a lot of very restrictive patterns with food, dealing with a lot of food guilt. So when I focused on making additions rather than restrictions, it helped me not focus too much on what I'm not supposed to eat, rather focus on what I can eat. And that gives you a more freer mindset and also allows you to make decisions that are more sustainable. So that's something that I often already do. I'll add some broccoli or some cabbage or a fruit to fast food that I order. And then one time we had Mang Inasal and I was like, hey, maybe I'll film this. Maybe I'll try to film this. Let's see what that turns out. So I put some lashes on and then I just put out the camera and I was like, I don't know what's going to happen with this. And that video did really, really well. And I was really surprised as well with the reception. A lot of people were happy to see that video. They loved the idea. So I thought, okay, you know what? I'm going to try again. And then I tried other fast foods, other popular fast foods, and just doing what and how I would usually eat it. But then I got a few comments that were a little bit more backlash. So I was like, maybe I shouldn't do it anymore. And I do love those episodes though, because they're just true to what I usually have in my life. It's not that I'm always eating fast food, but I do have it every now and then. And everyone has fast food for different reasons. Whether one, it's convenience and somewhat affordable. I think questionable now with all prices going up, but it's something people tend to turn to, especially when they're busy, especially if you're a corporate girly and if you have those as your only options, or if you're gonna order out or order in, usually you'll turn to fast food. Another reason is comfort, taste, nostalgia. People usually turn to those food items and that's perfectly fine. What we want, rather than feeling guilt about it, is to at least be satisfied and enjoy that meal. So as much as possible, we'll try to make additions. It usually has carbs, it usually has protein. Sometimes just needs a bit more fiber, a bit more produce. So maybe adding in a little bit of that veggie can make it more filling and more satisfying and really help us enjoy that meal more, but also feel more nourished. And it's just the little things that we can do every day that add up to those better nutrition choices. And that's really our goal, or my goal in that video, is to help other people see that it's not hopeless when it comes to nutrition. It's not all or nothing. It's not you have to be perfect or don't do anything at all. It's you can do a small thing, which is add a vegetable, and it can make a big difference. And of course, again, we want to emphasize it's not saying that you have to eat fast food or that you should only be eating fast food. It's more of just making a few little alterations to help it seamlessly add into your life and to your health instead.
I love the idea of adding rather than restricting. And I noticed that you're wearing donuts on your ears and all these little food trinkets.
Yeah.
Give us a tour.
Oh, okay. So these are my donut earrings. They're from the Craftolio on Instagram. And because I have a podcast, which is the Donut Podcast, I usually wear donut earrings. I also have a lot of food earrings. Actually, you'll notice that in my videos because I love food and it's also part of me being able to express myself. I also have this little charm bracelet. It's got matcha ice cream because I love matcha. It has durian because I also love durian. We have a durian tree at home. And then you have a little bit of sushi. There's pancakes, there's sardines. I just have a lot of food themed things. And I guess it's partly because I'm a dietitian and I've kind of branded myself as into food, but I also just love it. So food earrings, food stickers, food accessories, I have that all at home and I have that on me right now.
I love it. I think some of those items like donuts and whatever people think are unhealthy. If you want to be healthy, don't eat those things. And you always say you always deserve to eat.
Yes.
Right? What does that actually look like in practice for someone struggling with guilt in eating, let's say, a donut or having a sweet tooth?
Okay. So when I say you always deserve to eat, a lot of people actually really misinterpret that and they think that I'm just telling people to eat everything all the time. and I get it. I understand how that can be misinterpreted. But for me, you always deserve to eat is about giving yourself permission to eat whatever you want, whenever you want, however much you want, because that allows you to actually ask yourself what you want. Most of the time, whenever we eat something, it's not out of our own choice, but out of fear and guilt. You're either eating some vegetables because, oh, this is going to make me healthy. I have to eat it. You're not really eating it because of, oh, I want to feel nourished or I want to feel satisfied. At least most of the time, our mindset is, I have to eat this for this reason. So when we start to think, oh, I deserve to eat and I have the permission to eat whatever I want, you really get to tap into, what do I want? See, before, I would order a box of like 12 donuts and I would feel so rushed. And it's something we call the scarcity mindset, where the concept and the theory of this came in the financial world, but it very much applies to food, where when you feel like there's a scarcity or a lack of food in general, you will feel rushed and you will try to eat as much of it as you can to make up for it somehow. So in that 12 donuts, that dozen donuts that I had, I would try to eat it all in one day because in my mind, bukas bawal na yan. Tomorrow I'm not allowed to eat it, so I have to eat everything I can right now. And then over the years of learning about my body and intuitive eating, all of those things, I had another box of donuts come to the house. And then I realized I had like a bite of each donut to try it. Of course, I wanted to see which one my favorite was. But then I was done. I didn't feel like I had to eat the whole box anymore. And then we put the box into the refrigerator. And for the rest of the week, I forgot about it. Like sometimes I'll have another bite, but then I forget about it. And of course, we're not condoning food waste here. But that just shows us when you give yourself permission, you get to listen instead of being rushed. I didn't feel like, oh, I have to eat this all right now because I won't be able to anymore. I thought, hey, I can also eat this tomorrow and whenever I want to. So how much do I really want today? And that's how it should look like for you. What do I want to eat today that's going to make me feel my best? And how much of it will make me feel my best? So whether that is a donut, a salad, sinigang, or whatever you love to eat, you always try to focus on making additions rather than restrictions, and also trying to tune into what your body wants and needs and feels best at so that you don't overdo it.
Yeah. Again, I love this idea about adding rather than restricting and reframing our cravings as information rather than weakness. How do you help people learn to interpret what cravings are telling them?
Oh, okay. That takes a lot of time. And most of the time, I can't personally just tell you, oh, you're craving a cookie. It's because of this. Like, I don't know your body. You know your body best. So it's more about treating yourself a little bit like a science experiment or a little bit of a lab rat in a way, where moments in your life is just collecting data and information, at least for a certain period of time. And I noticed that for myself, where if I've experienced, let's say, 3 times where I wake up in the morning super duper hungry to the point where I don't even have the opportunity to decide what to eat, I have to figure out why that's happening. And if I look back in my day from yesterday, I'll get some information. Oh, my dinner was really, really early. And that is probably why I am having these major cravings, right? So that's one thing to look at, is what happened the day before. Another thing you can look at is what attachment do you have with that food? oh, it's because cookies are usually what my parents gave me when I was younger, when I was like feeling sad. Okay, so that's probably why you're craving cookies, is you do have an attachment to that. Another thing is taking a look at maybe experiences that you've had with that food item and experiences that other people might have with that food item. And you just have to collect as much data and information as you can until you're able to understand. And sometimes it's not even the same every day or all the time. Sometimes it's still different, but at least you have a little bit of an idea already. I'll give a little bit of an example. It's one of my clients, they didn't understand why every time they ate, they would eat until they were super duper full. Like they don't know when to stop. They have to eat until they're very, very full. So we kind of try to tap into what are your experiences when you were younger and you were eating? How did that look like for you? And then she mentioned how, oh, actually, I eat with a lot of brothers and I feel like I'm always gonna run out of food. And also, my dad never lets me leave the table unless I finish the food on my plate. So that gives you a lot more ideas of how you're eating today was affected by all of the different things that you've gone through in your life. So knowing that, she feels rushed. She also feels like she has to be very full to be given permission to leave the table. And those are things that now she has to unlearn. So it's really just looking back at all of these different things that you feel might have affected you, and then being able to navigate that as you move forward. And sometimes you'll have an answer, sometimes you won't. But what I usually do is give you a set of tools that helps you navigate it easier. And hopefully that will help.
In relation to that, I'm sure like upbringing, culture, and our social surroundings contribute a lot to how we view food. In your opinion, what cultural or social rules around eating do you believe are most harmful, especially in the Filipino context? What are some of the things that we should be aware of?
A lot of it is probably more related to kind of the holiday season type of the things that happen. For example, most of the time when you're in the holiday spirit, it is very all or nothing in a sense, where it's like, oh, I have to eat everything because none of these foods are ever available year round. There's that aspect of it. I think it's also if you don't eat, you are rude type of thing where you can't say no. I think that's a big part of our culture as well that we have to work on a bit. Of course, diba, Filipinos tend to say, kain tayo, things like that. Some people say it out of habit. Some people actually mean it. It depends. But a lot of the time, we feel like turning down food is bad. And it's perfectly fine to say no. It's also perfectly fine to say yes. But you have to make your own decisions. And that takes time to unlearn. I guess a lot of our Filipino culture is very much tied to togetherness and us doing things always at the same time, us enjoying things together. But there's so many different ways as well that we can enjoy or spend time together that doesn't always involve food. And that's just something that we have to learn more about as we get older, and setting boundaries especially. Big things as well as commenting on other people's food choices without knowing anything about them. It's like, ay, kukuha ka na naman ng kanin, or ay, ice cream na naman. Like, actually, first time ko mag-ice cream in like 6 months. So you don't know any of these things, but we comment on them. So I think a few of the habits or the cultural aspects that we have to take a look at. It's commenting on other people's food choices without knowing anything about them. And also trying to separate a bit more of our feelings around food or connecting our feelings too much with food, especially when it comes to friendships and connections, because while that is perfectly fine, sometimes we're not able to balance that.
Yeah, it's so funny that you mentioned that because in Filipino culture, food is central to gatherings, right? But comments about body size or eating habits are so common. How do you advise people to navigate these social pressures?
You know, one of the biggest comments or one of the biggest things that I always hear is when they're younger, their parents will tell them that they're getting bigger, and then their parents will also tell them to finish their food. Or also say, ay, ubusin mo nga to, busog na ako, ikaw na lang mag-ubos. That's such a confusing culture. But I think the most important thing to remember, especially when it comes to body comments or comments about food, is that nobody knows you or what you're going through aside from you. Right? Especially people that you only see once a month or once a year. They don't know anything that you're going through. So any comments that they have, they shouldn't be your truth, or they don't have to be your truth. You're allowed to get hurt because feelings exist and that's perfectly fine. But most of the time, comments are more about the other person rather than they are about you. Most of the time, it's comments about the other person's own insecurities or their own culture showing up. And they're not at all about how your body actually looks or about your own food choices. And that's really something we have to remember. As long as you know you're doing your best, that's what matters the most. And other comments are there, but they don't have to be the truth of it all. And that takes time, okay? I'm not saying this as if I'm like super good at navigating body comments or anything. It takes time to also go through that and like unlearn that, but that's very, very crucial. As long as you know yourself, that's what matters.
For someone coming from years of restriction and the journey that you went through, what is the most realistic first step towards a healthier relationship with food?
I think the most realistic first step would definitely be seeing where you are at right now and seeing what support or what things you might need. That's the most important because everybody is going to be different. We're not all going to have the same path or the same journey. So it's just about looking at what you need at the moment. I saw this video once that really summarized how everybody's journey and how everybody's food choices look different. For example, somebody is eating a donut. Somebody might be eating that donut because it's the first time in their life they've given themselves permission to, or they didn't want it at that moment, right? It's not necessarily you have to do this or you have to do that, but it's being able to make that decision on your own. And that's where we want to get to. Making food choices not out of fear, not out of guilt, but making food choices because you are learning to listen to your body. And that will look so different for everyone. So you have to check in with yourself. What do I need right now? Do I need a more consistent meal pattern to help me understand my food choices or my appetite better? Do I need to add more veggies so I can feel more satisfied with my meals? Or do I need to give myself a bit more permission every day to eat a chocolate or to eat some ice cream so that I can remove that fear? So I want you to check in with yourself and just ask, what is the most doable thing that I can do right now? What do I need the most at this moment? And most of the time it revolves around a few similar habits, which is either a more consistent meal pattern, more balanced meals, or giving yourself more permission. But that can still definitely change and it can still look different on everyone.
Yeah, I love that. And I think something that's so important also for people to learn is to debunk myths, which is what we're going to do.
All right.
So we have a couple of myths or common ideas on food that we want to ask you about. The first is canned food is always bad for you. True or false?
So here's the thing about processed food in general. A lot of processed foods are made to make food supply safer and more accessible. And that's a big thing that people don't realize because most of the time we think processed food, bad. Like that's it. Processed food equals bad. But again, processed food was created to allow people to nourish themselves better. Imagine all of these food items you would have to hunt and gather first before you could eat it. So canned foods are not automatically bad. Of course, it will depend on how much and what percentage of your food intake that is. But it can allow you to have more access to food. Whether that's canned veggies, whether that's canned protein, or other canned items, it helps keep us nourished and fed. As long as it's not the only thing that you're consuming, it can be part still of a balanced diet.
Okay, next myth. Filipino food is unhealthy.
Oh, this is the worst one. This myth, I think, really comes from what we see on social media or what foreigners see about Filipino food. I think that's the biggest perpetuator of this. Because when people say Filipino food is bad, what they usually refer to is lechon, spaghetti, halo-halo. What they see is usually celebratory foods. They usually see party foods, the foods that you see online. They don't see that each province has their own version of sinigang and tinola and different very nourishing dishes. Usually, most Filipino meals are actually very balanced. There's protein, there's veggies, there's a carbohydrate source. Most of the time, it comes from fresh produce. There's so many different vegetables involved. most Filipino cuisine is actually very nourishing and very balanced. It's just that we have to, of course, be able to apply it. The tendency is as well, if you go to a restaurant, for example, you have sinigang and there's like only one kangkong leaf. So there's also that aspect to it. But in general, I think it's a big myth because we don't see the full story. We don't see how a lot of people who live in the provinces actually get their vegetables from their own garden, make their own food at home. We don't see that. We only see the gourmetified food that you see online, and that really changes the narrative. So Filipino food can be balanced, can be healthy. It will always depend, of course, on the preparation, but in general, most of the time, they can fit.
Next myth, sugar first thing in the morning is bad for you.
Ooh, okay. So I wouldn't say it's automatically bad, but we do understand where this idea of it not being the best option for your first choice can come from. And usually it's because when we eat something that has sugar or has carbohydrates, it tends to be absorbed by your bloodstream. Okay, so whenever you eat something that is carbohydrate rich or often sweet, it will turn into sugar. And that's not automatically a bad thing. That's just the building block of carbohydrates. When you have this, it will increase your blood sugar, give you that energy. That's the normal process. Now, when you have it as your first meal, there's a tendency that you might feel that spark of energy and then later kind of feel a little bit drowsy, a little bit sleepy as your blood sugar levels drop down. And also, sometimes when you have it as your first meal, it's not always that satisfying, especially when it's on its own. It's not bad, but I would recommend some more balance. A little bit of an example of this is cereal. So cereal is a very common first meal, breakfast type of food. And yes, it has a tendency to be higher on the sugar side or higher in the carbohydrate side. And that's perfectly fine if you are somebody who's going to hit the ground running as you wake up. You need that burst of energy. But if you want to have more sustained energy throughout the day, well, what you can do is maybe add some fruits or maybe add some protein into the mix, adding yogurt or adding milk or an egg on the side, adding some fruits, adding some nuts to make that more balanced. So it's not necessarily that sugar is bad or like carbs are bad for breakfast, but it's more about making sure that it's balanced so that you have a more sustained energy source in your first meal.
In relation to that, there's also an idea that fruit equals sugar. Therefore, this is bad for you? Is this correct?
Everybody is so mad at sugar, but they don't realize there's two main types of sugar. You have natural sugar, which comes from food, potatoes, rice, oats. They all turn into sugar, but again, that's not a bad thing. That's just the building blocks of carbs. And then you have your added sugar. And added sugar is the brown sugar, white sugar, honey, maple syrup, and the things that you tend to add to food. Usually, natural sugars get a bad reputation because sugar is often seen as bad. And when we look at it, all of these food sources are actually very high in nutrition. Fruits have so many vitamins and minerals. They're loaded and packed with that. And they're also providing us with fiber. So fruit is not bad. I think that's one of the worst myths because why are we fearing fruit? Like, why do we fear especially fruits from a tropical country? Like, those are all of these different things that we hear. You can definitely have it. It always just comes back down to the overall amount in your diet, of course.
Next myth, if you want to lose weight, you should do intermittent fasting.
Okay. So this isn't necessarily wrong in a sense that if you do intermittent fasting, you can't lose weight, but it's more of a myth in the sense that you have to do it, right? It's not something that you have to do. But what is intermittent fasting? So intermittent fasting by its name is intermittent fasting. You're fasting for a certain period of time. And when we say fasting, there is no consumption of anything that will be turned into energy. So usually that would just be water when you're fasting. Some people say that you can have coffee. Some people say that you can't. It also depends on where or who you're talking to in that sense. But fasting usually goes in intervals. So sometimes people will do 8-16. Some people will do 12-12. Anywhere around the day where you have an interval of you eating and then you not eating. So why do people lose weight when they're intermittent fasting? It's because they create what we call a calorie deficit. And anyone who wants to lose weight has to create a calorie deficit. This isn't a diet. This is just the science of weight loss. Calories are energy, so it's a measure of energy. meaning how much energy your body uses when you walk, run, breathe. It's measured in calories. And everyone has a specific amount of calories you need in a day. I'm going to throw out a random number. This is not the exact number for everyone, but let's say 2,500. That's how many calories you need in a day for you to maintain your body, your health, and your weight. If you want to lose weight, you have to eat less than that so that your body will now tap into stored energy. If you eat more than that, we call that a calorie surplus, and any excess will be stored as energy for later use, usually in the form of fat or sometimes in the form of maybe muscle glycogen. So when we create a calorie deficit, this would be less calories than you need in a day. It can be anywhere from 500 calories or 300 calories or anything like that. You have to create a deficit for your body to use your stored energy. And when you do intermittent fasting, sometimes you create a calorie deficit without having to count calories because maybe you skipped a meal. Maybe you didn't eat something that you usually do. Like let's say you have 3 meals a day. Now you're only having 2. So without you counting calories, you've already cut out a big chunk of calories in general. Now that is why some people lose weight when they intermittent fast, but it doesn't always happen for everyone because some people might end up having a binge starve cycle where you have a fasting period and then during your period where you're allowed to eat, you start to eat everything you can. So then you end up in a calorie surplus. Another thing is some people might not know how much they're actually eating in those meals. So it's not so much about fasting itself, but that fasting helps people create a calorie deficit without them thinking about it too much. Would I personally recommend fasting? We all technically fast in some way because when you're asleep, you don't really eat. Now, so at least for the time that you're sleeping, you have a fasting period of your own, but it's not necessary for us to lose weight. It can be something that you do if it fits into your life, but it's not something you have to do to be healthy.
Next myth, healthy food is always expensive and the healthy lifestyle is only for the rich.
Ooh, I'm gonna have a hard time debunking this now because of like life. No, no, but I definitely get the idea because nowadays health is definitely a privilege, right? In terms of access to places to move your body, in terms of access to affordable goods, it's definitely a privilege. But I think in general, the idea of health being expensive usually comes because we have a certain picture of what health looks like. And most of the time we think it's the kale, it's the quinoa, it's the chia seeds and all of these Western food items. It's also a very expensive gym. So the way we think of health looks very expensive because of what we usually see online. But health can be a walk in your house. It can be doing a bit of dancing in front of the TV. It can be buying kangkong from your local market. It can be focused on local ingredients that are more affordable to you. It looks different on everyone. So I don't think health has to be expensive. But I do think it's becoming a bit harder and harder nowadays to achieve the health that we want to because of the climate that we have in terms of accessibility and just the things that we have in general. But in general, it's not supposed to be super expensive.
Yeah, definitely. A follow-up question actually is, how can people stay healthy even on a tight budget?
Okay, the first thing you have to do is check your budget, see how much you can truly allot. The next thing is to be realistic with what you can do. So if your budget cannot fit the gym, that's okay. What can you do at home that helps you move? Or what can you do that is free that helps you move? Is it walking in a certain area or certain place? Maybe going to the mall and just like going up and down. Although I don't know if that's the best for your budget because when you're at the mall, you spend. So, those looking for those little things. How can you make movement free? That's one thing if you can't afford the gym. Another thing is what is available to you in your local market? What fits in your budget in terms of food items. If that is canned tuna, that's fine. If that is vegetables from the wet market, let's go for it. So you have to see what is available to you. That is the best thing that we can do. And of course, plan. Planning is the biggest budget-friendly tip or hack that anyone could have. Because if you have no plan, you're more likely to spend a lot. But if you make a plan of like what you want to cook or eat for the week so that you can stay on budget, Even if you don't follow it strictly, at least it helps you stay on your path. If you have a plan for how you're going to move your body without having to spend so much money, that's going to help keep you on your path. So look at what's available to you, be realistic, and plan for it.
Okay, last myth is eating at night will make you gain weight.
Oh, that's an interesting myth because the world has different time zones. So what is nighttime? Which nighttime are we referring to, right? This myth tends to come from the idea that when you're sleeping, you don't move. So anything that you eat at that time just gets stored as fat, and that's not true. So like we talked about, there's a certain amount of calories that you need in a day. And as long as you're not going over that, nothing necessarily turns into fat or gets stored as excess energy. At the end of the day, your calorie amount will matter more than the time. Because your body will process food in the same way, whether that's 6 a.m. or 6 p.m. There's no difference from 6 o'clock and 6:01. That's a complete myth. Your body is super duper smart. Now, there are certain things that we can look at because the tendency when you eat later at night, especially when it's dark, melatonin, which is a hormone, tends to impact your insulin levels. Insulin is the one that unlocks the cell and lets sugar in to be used. And melatonin kind of tells your body, ay, matutulog na tayo, rest na tayo. It's not as efficient anymore by nighttime. So that tends to have an impact in the way that you digest and absorb and utilize energy. Not in the sense of storing fat, but it could impact, let's say, your satiety levels, where you might eat more at night because it's not as satisfying or because you're more tired, which might lead to weight gain, but not necessarily because it's at night, but the other things that impact that. And some studies show that when you eat earlier in the day, or what we call front-loading your calories, you're more able to notice your satiety levels. You're able to also have better blood sugar balance. So those are some things we can look at. But that doesn't mean that eating at night is automatically bad. It's more of habits that are connected to eating at night that play a bigger role.
The idea of a balanced meal actually comes up a lot in this conversation. I wanted to ask, what does a balanced meal actually look like?
So when it comes to a balanced meal, you can focus or you can look at a few references that we usually have. One, locally, that's Pinggang Pinoy. You can also look at Canada's Food Guide or the US My Plate. Every country has their own guide, but they're pretty similar. They show us that in your plate, there is space for carbs, protein, and fats. And of course, your produce, which is your fruits and your vegetables. Because this ensures that you have all of the nutrients you need and a most satisfying meal. Because when they're all present, you'll notice you'll feel more full and more satisfied and more energetic long term. Why? Because if you just have carbs, for example, it's filling, yes, but the tendency is quick absorption, quick use for energy. You add protein, it will add more satiety, slow down absorption, better energy sustained. Now you add fiber, even better energy, even better blood sugar balance. And then you add some healthy fats, better energy, better blood sugar balance. So it's the combination of all of those food items that help make us feel our best and give us the most satiating and most sustained energy in a meal. So a balanced diet would look like, as much as possible, having that balance in your plate whenever you can. So whenever you look at your plate, try to see, is there carbs? Is there protein? Is there fats? Is there fiber? Is something missing? What can I add? And even if it's not balanced all the time, that's perfectly fine. We just have to try our best in every single meal. But that's essentially what a balanced meal looks like on a plate. In the bigger picture, balance looks like you being able to eat your nourishing foods, but also you being able to enjoy the food that you're eating. Because healthy food is only as healthy as it can be if you eat it. And if you don't want to eat it, then what's the point? Right? It has to still be something you enjoy.
I'm so curious because usually a lot of people now look to, let's say, ChatGPT or AI, right, to help them with their meal plans and help them diet. What are your thoughts on that? Is this a credible source?
Okay, that's a great question because I actually made a video in the past of me trying to make a balanced diet through ChatGPT. So I was like, okay, make me a meal plan for a whole week. This is my information. Can you make the meal plan for me? And then I had it do two because the first one it did fit so many Western food items. It was like yogurt, and it was like quinoa, and it was all the food items that's not available to me. So then I said Filipino dishes. And then it made me that menu. But one thing that we can know about AI that is very different from a dietitian that will talk to you and consult with you is there are a lot of nuances it doesn't see. For example, the availability of certain food items in your area. Only you know that, and only you can tell your dietitian that. Maybe you can tell ChatGPT that, and maybe it will alter that. Another thing that I also noticed is it doesn't consider the availability of certain food items in a way that it was telling me to eat suman for my snack, but I don't have that readily available. Yes, it's a Filipino dish, but it's not like, okay, I have suman in the backyard. Like, okay, kaya ko yan. Or in the grocery, you can easily buy suman. It's not like that, right? So there are definitely certain aspects in creating a more individual meal plan for you that AI cannot get. There is the human aspect that AI doesn't have, or the experience of making food. ChatGPT made me basically have a different meal in every single day, in every single dish. And like, I don't have time to cook all of this all the time. Everything was just a classic Filipino dish where I guess because that's what you would search without the variations that we usually have on a day-to-day. So it's really lacking that. I think it can help as more of a framework if you need an idea. Like, okay, I need an idea for my meal plan. And that can be a blueprint, and then you just change it out. That can be a starting point. But of course, as much as possible, it would be best to consult your dietitian to give you an individualized plan that is more realistic.
Thank you so much. I learned so much today. Thank you, Jo. To end, if there's one thing that you want people to remember from everything you said in the previous episode and even today,
when it comes to your health, it's about making additions, not restrictions. And I'm not just talking about food, I'm also talking about adding value rather than taking things away. It works in every habit. Because if you think about, let's say, the habit of drinking soda, and you're like, stop drinking soda, you're only going to think about not drinking soda. But if you change the habit to, I'm going to drink more water, that's going to give you something to look forward to and something to feel accomplished when you do it. So that is how I would ask you to view your self-care. What are things that you can add into your routine and add into your life that will give you value rather than constantly thinking about the things that you have to take away? If it's screen time, instead of thinking of stop looking at your phone, oh, maybe I'll try to journal more, walk more, read a book more, because that at least helps you feel more excited and also more accomplished rather than just feeling like a failure when you're not able to do it. And self-care should always come with the care aspect. Otherwise, it's self-hate. The biggest thing we have to do is truly find the care in your self-care. So this is Jo Sebastian. Again, I'm a registered nutritionist and dietitian, and you can find me at It's Jo Sebastian on pretty much all platforms. And you can also find the Donut Box Pod on YouTube and Spotify. This was the Soul Pod, and hope you guys tune into the next episodes.